All right, let me go ahead and get this pulled up and I will share a screen. So my name is Haley and this is Clint right next to me. So I know it says Clint Spear. So that's who it is. And then can you give me the option to share a screen?
I need to do that.
If you can just make me the host or give me the ability, it should work.
It says you're allowed to share the screen.
It says host disabled it.
Yeah, you gotta make her the host or co-host.
Okay, Haley, talk again where I can find your name.
Okay,
It's under Clint.
yep, under Clint.
Clint and participant.
Hey, how about that?
Okay, let me try it. There we go. Thank you.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure how many of you guys are familiar with PATH, but I'll go ahead and do a little bit of an introduction just on who we are. And then Clint's going to take over from there on out. We actually had an emergency come up, so I'm going to have to step out, but Clint will be presenting today and you'll be in good hands. So PATH is located in North Little Rock, Arkansas. We are known as Partners Against Trafficking Humans. So this is actually our 10-year anniversary. PATH has been in existence since 2011. So we serve clients from various ages, as young as 4 years old up to mid 40s and 50s. So we work with any client or victim that's been a victim of any type of sex crime, sexual assault, sexual abuse, as well as sex trafficking. So we have a day program that when we receive clients and they come into our program, they can receive a trauma-informed therapist. So all their therapy is completely paid for. They get that for free. So any of the services that we provide for them, they don't have to pay for. So they come in and they can receive therapy. They can also receive life skills classes. So what the life skills classes does is really meets them where they are. So anytime that a survivor will tell us that they really want to learn how to cook or learn how to budget, or if they want to learn how to milk a cow, whatever it is, we're going to let them, we'll have a class for that. So a lot of times people don't really realize how much life skills that survivors of sex trafficking actually need. But when you think about it, when these girls have been living on the streets or maybe selling their bodies for years and years, they may only know how to do that. So they may not have the basic life skills they need to brush their teeth or to take care of themselves. So that's really what we work on here in the day program. And then the third part of the day program is the fun part. So that's where we go on hike trips, we do outings, we just really let the girls have the time to reintegrate back into everyday society and to just feel that love when they're going through this healing process. So that's just a little bit about PATH. We do have a lot of growth happening here. So we're actually in the process of opening a thrift store, consignment store that is survivor led. So that will be in the Little Rock Maumelle area. And so that is hopefully opening by the end of this year. And then we are also in the process of trying to look for a safe house. So several years ago, PATH actually had a safe house. We were able to serve 9 women in the home. But to be honest, we just couldn't keep it open due to lack of funding. It was costing $15,000 a month just to keep it open. So it was a lot of money, but we kind of feel that God is leading us back into opening another one. So we are in the process of looking for another location that we could house women of that are survivors of sexual abuse. So I will go ahead and let Clint take over for now. Do you guys have any questions about PATH in general before we move on? Okay. All right, Clint, I'll let you have it.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we've had anybody request the life skill of milking a cow yet, but I'm sure we will at some point. So let's just go into a quick breakdown of what is human trafficking. And one thing a lot of people don't, I guess, understand about trafficking is it really is just modern day slavery is one good way to put it. And what it is when one individual makes a profit off of buying, selling, or trading another human being for the purposes of sex. And three ways that takes place. There has to be three elements for a crime to have been committed, and that's force, fraud, and coercion. And we'll go into those a little bit later in some other slides. And one thing to remember is it doesn't have to be an exchange of a person for money. People think it's usually the prostitution that, you know, money is being exchanged for the buying, selling, trading of another person. It can be for anything of profit. It can be property, it could be rent, it could be clothing, electronics, drugs is a big perpetrator of it. So anytime anything's being exchanged for somebody else, then that's how it takes place. Now let's go into a little bit of the force, fraud, and coercion. People, when they think of sex slavery or human trafficking, the first thing that comes to their mind is that first one of their force. They think of kidnapping, they think of the sketchy white van, they think of somebody in chains in a basement. And honestly, I think that is the least likely way that it happens. People see that movie Taken, to where someone's drugged, kidnapped, and before they know it, they're being sold somewhere else. It does happen, but in our experience, that is the least likely way. The second one is fraud. That can look like so many different things. A lot of it comes through promises of job opportunities. Say you get a teenage girl or anybody on there looking for modeling or acting opportunities, and someone's promising to, let's say I'll fly you out to LA or New York or wherever, and I'll cover all of your expenses. I'll pay for housing, food. You just come out here, shoot a few scenes, and you know this is going to kickstart your career. And before they know it, when they get there, it's not at all what they were promised or what they thought it was going to be. And one thing leads to another. They're being abused on camera, and that image and video or whatever it is being distributed online, and they have no control over who has that, and it's going to be out there forever for them to have to cope with. Another one is coercion, and that can look like anything from threats to their life, threats to their family, any kind of manipulation. And I would say force and fraud happen. 100% of the clients that we've dealt with have said coercion played a big part in it. And that could look like anything from these phrases we see here where it says, if you love me, you would do this. You know, it's your responsibility to keep those bills paid. And I have personally a little sister, and one of the tactics they use is they'll say, well, if you don't do it, I'll just go and get your little sister to do it. And if I were put in that situation, I would almost feel a responsibility to do whatever I had to keep my family safe. Now, we've been seeing a lot all over the place with Jeffrey Epstein and R. Kelly, and this is a prime example. The fraud aspect is a prime example of, you know, how people, famous people, anybody uses fraud to perpetrate what they want. You know, these young aspiring singers thought they just hit the jackpot by R. Kelly showing interest in them, saying, hey, if you stick to me, if you do what I asked, then, you know, I'll kickstart your career. And before they know it, they're being abused. They don't see a way out. They're being forced to do things they don't want to do. Once they're in it, coercion keeps them in it. And another way to look at it is, it really is, it's not so much of a trap of the body, it's more of a trap of the mind. So they know how to manipulate people and get into their minds and just play the long game with them. Another number that really struck me when I started this is there's an estimated 40 million victims of human trafficking worldwide. And as we talked about in the beginning, that's really there's 40 million slaves, and there's more people enslaved right now through trafficking than there's ever been in the history of recorded time. There's an estimated 800,000 US citizens trafficked annually. It's the fastest growing criminal industry, second largest only to drug trafficking. And I think if things don't change, if we don't make a difference or we don't get tougher legislation, I think it's going to surpass drug trafficking. And I think one of the reasons that is drugs are a very consumable good. You know, once you sell cocaine or a pill, that person takes it, it's gone forever. But with a person, they can be sold 20, 30, 40 times a night and rinse and repeat, do it night and night after night, you know, for as long as they can keep control over that person. And also, as drugs are becoming more and more legal, they're having to be trafficked less and less. So that's really dipping into, you know, the drug traffickers' profit. So they're going to where the money is. They're going to start trafficking humans more than drugs. Now, these next two numbers, I think we can take with a grain of salt because it is very much underreported. But the numbers we have now say that 71% are female and 29% are male. I personally think that the male statistic is probably a little bit higher, but again, all these numbers are just the ones we have recorded, and I think unfortunately it goes underreported. The average age that somebody is trafficked, and this is just here in the United States, is 12 to 14 years old. Of course, it can start much younger. The youngest client we've had come through the program was 4 years old, and unfortunately, she came into the program saying that she was a porn star because what was happening is her dad was actually the perpetrator. He was abusing her on camera and then posting those videos and pictures online. And she knew about it, but she was 4, so you know she didn't know any better. So she came in thinking she was a porn star. Worldwide, that age is much younger. It's 7 to 9 in places in like Thailand. And unfortunately, even here in the United States, the younger the victim, the more money that a trapper can get for them. So of course it goes much younger, but you know, this is just the average age here in the States. 1 in 3 runaways is approached by a pimp within 48 hours. And one of the reasons is these traffickers and pimps, they know what to look for. They know these insecurities and these victims to look for. So they see an underage minor, anybody at let's say a gas station or a bus stop with all their belongings in a trash bag, or they pick up on their personal insecurities, their head is down, they're just looking uncomfortable, and they'll pick up on little cues and really know how to hone in on those. Now, just to put the profitability into perspective, human trafficking brings in $150 billion annually. And let's compare that to, say, Google, Nike, Starbucks, and the NFL combined don't make as much as human trafficking. And just think about each one of those companies individually, how much profit they make. You put all 4 of those together and they don't come close to making as much as human trafficking does. Now, really, human trafficking is an exploitation of vulnerabilities. And up here, we have some of the vulnerabilities listed that they really know how to hone in on. Things like disabilities. Foster care is also known as, they're missing in plain sight because they're in a system that is supposed to be protecting them, but unfortunately, they can fall through the cracks. It's a system that is overworked and understaffed in a lot of areas. There's just such a big caseload that it's hard to keep track of everybody. Chaos can lead to people running away, which puts them in danger. Natural disasters. This is one that people don't often think about. And one reason that natural disasters is on here is because it displaces families in a lot of instances. It could separate a child from his parents. The house gets blown away. They're separated from their parents and they're wandering the streets looking for a safe place to go, not knowing where to go. So they may be 3 blocks away and the parents think that their child got blown away in the storm, but really they're 3 blocks away being abused and just thinking their parents got blown away in the storm. So, displacement plays a big role in it. Another one is insecurities, like we talked about. If they need that affirmation, a lot of this takes place in a grooming process, but if they need that affirmation, it's not hard to find online on these these social media places. It's full of predators just looking to tell anybody whatever they need to hear to boost their self-image so that they can get their claws in them. Another one is drug abuse. We actually got, the youngest client we've had in the program is 4, but we actually got a call several months ago about an 8-month-old that was being sold by the mom, traded by the mom here in Central Arkansas for the purposes of an exchange of drugs, because they're just so, dependent on the drugs, and they see their child as more of an expendable resource than anything. Another, I think one of the major, avenues is peer recruitment. And one thing to remember about peer recruitment, sometimes it is malicious. A lot of times it's not. Let's say in the instance of let's say R. Kelly, their friend may have gotten close to R. Kelly and didn't really know the real R. Kelly yet, but they knew, like, hey, I've got a friend who is an, aspiring singer. Hey, I've got this in channel through R. Kelly. He'd love to meet you. He says he can kickstart your career. So connections are made that way. All right, now when dealing with these unfortunate survivors, there are some red flags and warning signs that we can keep our eyes open for to help us identify these people and maybe get the conversation started. A big one is tattoos and brandings. Now, traffickers and pimps have, their own pretty much logo that they'll tattoo their women with, and it can be something as big as their name across somebody's chest. We've seen that. It can be something as small as dots on the hand, or let's say a 5-point crown with their name or initials underneath it. Avoiding eye contact. If this is somebody that's usually outgoing and they come in one day and they just refuse to make eye contact, a big reason this is, you think it's guilt and shame, but a lot of these people that are in the lifestyle are trained by their trafficker not to make eye contact because it's a sign of disrespect to their pimp. And there's usually pretty heavy-handed consequences if, they're caught making eye contact. If they lack freedom to come and go as they please, if they need to go somewhere, but they have to call and ask permission from somebody before they do that, that's a red flag. Bruises in various stages of healing. If somebody says they're from the area, but obviously through conversation you find out they don't know where the closest Walmart is or the closest Walgreens, that's just a sign that they lack knowledge of the area, which is a warning sign. If in the flow of conversation that they use terms like, they're just paying off a debt, well, I've never known anybody who's had to put themselves out there like that just to pay off a debt. In reality, they'll never be able to pay off that debt. It always gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Here's some additional red flags. We'll touch on a few of these. We've already talked about a few of them. If you're talking to a survivor and they're having trouble recalling, exactly what happened, it's because trauma has taken place. And when trauma moves into the brain, it's really hard to put events in like a linear chronological order. It may seem choppy, and that's why it's hard to prosecute a lot of times, because the trafficker gets up there and their story is flawless. There's no holes in their alibi. When you get the victim up there and their story is choppy and it's changing because they can't remember all the details. So one way to really get them to engage what happened is to engage their senses, with questions like, let's say, well, what happened next? What did you see? What was in the room at the time? Instead of, asking closed-ended questions that require a yes or no answer, ask open-ended questions that really, I guess gets them to engage their senses of what was going on at the time. Changes in behavior is usually going to take place. Like I said, it could be somebody who's usually, a big personality. They're real friendly, talkative. They show up the next day and they're really closed off, and that's just their new personality, is just from one end to the other. And it could go from somebody who was, at the start, they were really shy and, just wore a lot of clothes and was just a really closed off person. And then all of a sudden they come in the next week and they're over sexualized. They're showing so much of themselves. It makes you wonder, like, hey, what's going on with you? I mean, I've noticed this drastic change. Is there something you need to talk about? And here is a tough one to really nail down. Who are the perpetrators? And really they could be anybody. It's traumas happened to me, and it was from a older family member of mine that was very trusted, very well known. So really it could be anybody. But the grooming process, they buy them things like gifts, they take them on dates, they start to introduce them to a lifestyle that they didn't think was possible. And before you know it, they think they've met the love of their life. And before they know it, the love of their life is like, hey, I've been buying you all these nice things, taking you to these nice places. I'm going to need something in return. And they feel trapped at that point. They can be charming. Let's look at the case of Jeffrey Dahmer. Even during his trial, when all of these horrific details were coming out, women were still showing up, just swooning over this guy because of how charismatic and charming he was. Even though they knew what he was being accused of, they just couldn't help themselves. They want to build a relationship with children. Now, this is a big one as well. Normally an adult likes to seek relationships to other adults or the like-minded people, but some, if they're going out of their way to draw closer to children and spend more alone time with children than with adults, that's a big red flag. Let's see, promises a better life. That goes back to the grooming process. They take advantage of the vulnerabilities, and really they can be anybody. And another big one is they push and cross boundaries. And this could be anywhere through conversation. They tend to gear towards uncomfortable conversation topics just to gauge reactions, or if they keep pushing a boundary long enough, the person will take that as normal and just entertain it. Or it could be physical boundaries where it's a hug that lasts too long, or and honestly, if a kid gets an uneasy feeling, then I think we need to trust their instincts and not really force them into those uncomfortable hugs with an uncle or a family member or somebody at church. We need to respect those boundaries, and if they don't want to, let's let them have that space. Another reason trafficking is so big here in Arkansas is because of these two interstates right here, I-40 and I-30. They're the two main veins that run right through Arkansas, north, south, east, and west. And it's a good in and out for traffickers. If they feel the heat from law enforcement, they can be on the freeway and out of the state within, let's say, 2.5 hours in each direction. Another reason they like Arkansas is because the laws aren't really as strict as they need to be yet. There's been a lot of progress made, but there's still a lot of progress that needs to be made. Let's say, for one instance, in 2013, it was changed from a misdemeanor for trafficking up to a felony. But really, criminals, if that's the way of life that they've chosen, I don't think they really care if it's a misdemeanor or a felony. They're going to do it anyways. Another one in 2015, the Safe Harbor Act was ensured, and that was to protect. Let's say there was a bust and there was a minor underage prostitute. That's saying that they can't be arrested and charged for prostitution because they're a minor. They can't really give consent, so they're treated more as a victim and provided services. Let's say 2017, mandatory continuing education was enacted for educators. They have a certain amount of continuing education credits they have to get in this area. That's that bill, which is Truckers Against Trafficking. In order for somebody to get their CDL, they have to take a course online and pass it that highlights some things that they need to look out for as far as trafficking is concerned. And the John bill is it states that if somebody is pulled over and they're caught transporting a trafficking victim, then their car is going to be impounded. They're going to have to pay a fine to get that car back, and that fine goes to pay for victim services, which it's all a good start, but I think there's still a long way to go. Now, if anyone's got their phone out, I would encourage them to say this number. This is our 24-hour helpline. There's always somebody on the other end of this call for, let's say, somebody thinks that they may be a trafficking victim. And one thing, don't ask them, hey, are you being trafficked? Really just get to know them and get to be that safe person. And if it's somebody you can point them to this phone line. We can connect them to resources. If they need to start the therapy process, anything we can do to get them on the road to healing, we're more than willing to do. Now, here's just some bullet points of stuff we've already gone over, but some real highlight takeaways that we want you guys to know. Understand that not everyone recognizes themselves as a victim. sometimes people are being victimized and they really don't understand in the moment that they're being victimized. They could think that they're in a loving relationship, but it's like, well, I shouldn't have said no, or when he drinks, he just gets a little forceful, or it's my job as A, B, and C to provide this. And unfortunately, we had one client that she thought she had met the love of her life. He was preparing her food every night, but she was falling asleep after eating her food and not really realizing how she was falling asleep. She just remembers waking up. Well, it all came crashing down when she woke up in the middle of the night one night and found multiple men on top of her. And that's when she realized that the love of her life was really drugging her food and letting his friends come over in exchange for money. So, it's not always what you think it might be when you think of a prostitute or a victim. So I think it's important for us to have a sense of grace and mercy and understanding when it comes to talking to survivors. Trust your gut. I think it's important to be nosy. Don't be afraid to interject yourself if you think something like this is going on. It really could save somebody's life. Trafficking and sexual abuse are vastly underreported and underreported and even unreported. And that could be for a multiple reasons. It could be because they don't know they're a victim. The guilt and the shame just keeps them from coming forward. They're scared. They're scared for their life. We had one client who unfortunately wasn't being abused herself yet, but she had brought her friend through the form of peer recruitment into a relationship with this guy that was providing her with so much. She's like, hey, he can provide this for you too. So when the trafficker approached the friends like, hey, I've been buying you all the stuff, I need you to start sleeping with all these guys, she said no. The trafficker killed her, and now the friend is stuck with all the guilt and the shame and is scared to come forward. And this last point is letting them know that that they're not a criminal, they're a victim. A lot of times people are afraid to come forward because they're afraid of being prosecuted or treated as a criminal. Just letting them know it's not your fault, you're a victim, not a criminal. So let's get you on the road to healing. Now here's some ways you can get involved. Donating is always a good way. Request a speaker like we're doing here. We're always happy to go anywhere or talk to anybody we need to, because I think education and prevention go hand in hand. So we're always happy to talk to whoever we can. Teaching a life skill class like Haley talked about. If you know how to milk a cow, we may get that question one day. So answering helpline calls, you can volunteer to get trained to answer that helpline call that we talked about, and the crisis response team. And I think that is all I have. Here is our website at the bottom, our office number, and of course our 24-hour helpline. So if anybody needs to get a hold of us at any time for any reason, we're always here to help any way we can. Does anybody have any questions? Well, thank y'all so much for your time. I hope y'all got something from this. And if you have any questions, if anything hits you later on down the road and you think, man, I should have asked that question, then please email us or call us, and we're happy to answer any question we can or help in any way we can. All right, thank y'all.
Thank you. And I put the Survey Monkey thing in for you to do the survey. I will put it in there again.
Okay.
Not. So please fill out the survey. And that was great information.
Look, Carol, it looks like a question in the chat.
Oh, I see that.
Yeah. Can you help if there is anyone that you suspect something going on that's in foster care?
Oh, I don't know if Clint, did he get off?
Oh, he may have already left. Okay, so that's Bent Erickson. Maybe we can make a note and try to get that question to him. Yeah, I'll forward that on.
Okay.
It looks like somebody else asked if they have Spanish speakers.
I see that too. But I can't tell who the Spanish speaker's question came from. It's on an iPhone. So in the chat, Ann has put their web page. If anybody wants to, the two people that had questions, if you want to send them that on their web page. Okay, our next session will begin at too many things open on the computer. The next session will start at 1:45. So you guys can have a little bit of a break until 1:45. And that will be a big group session. Thank you.